Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Tarek O'Dali from Business Review, and I will be your host. It is our pleasure to have Appian with us today, who'll be presenting this webinar titled Product Life Cycle Transformation, Best Practices for the Digital Era. Today's guest speakers are Rob Taylor, Director of Global Regulatory Affairs and Clinical Safety at Merck & Co. And also we have Evi Cohen, Vice President, Global Pharma and Life Sciences at Appian. You're going to hear from them in just a moment. But now I'm going to move us forward here into our interactive poll question. So this is an interactive poll. I'd like you all to please take part, and please do that by selecting the answer that's most relevant to you and hitting that submit button there. So you should see this question. It says, when I think about implementing a digital platform for business process automation, I want to solve specific critical business problems. That's the first choice. Second choice is design and deploy a solution in weeks, not months. Implement a cost-effective solution. That's your third option there. Establish a digital platform that can address multiple business challenges. Or all of the above is the fifth choice there. So the question again, when I think about implementing a digital platform for business process automation, I want to solve specific critical business problems, design and deploy a solution in weeks, not months, implement a cost-effective solution, establish a digital platform that can address multiple business challenges, or all of the above. Please select your answer and make sure to hit submit to submit your vote. I'm going to give you just a few more moments now to vote in this interactive poll. Don't forget there's going to be a live Q&A session at the end of this webinar, so if you have any questions along the way, please do submit those by typing them into the box at the top left-hand corner of your screen and hit submit. Okay, so I think that's given you all enough time now to vote in this interactive poll. Thank you very much for taking part. There'll be another poll happening later on in the webinar, but now let's have a look at the results. Okay, so it looks like we have a winner, all of the above. Thank you very much to everyone who took part, and now I'm going to hand you over to our first speaker. Rob, over to you.
Thank you very much. Morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on where you're based. So I am from Merck, and I'm going to give a little bit of a discussion around some of the activities that we're working on, specifically in our regulatory and clinical safety space. I just put up our vision and our corporate vision and mission statements to kind of frame up kind of where Merck's overall direction is, and we're really looking to use innovative capabilities to bring new medicines, vaccines, and other products to improve our patients' lives. And we really are focused on innovative new products, not me-too products or things that just provide, incremental benefit, but really kind of to address some of the unmet medical needs. And I think we've done a good job in the pharmaceutical industry with innovating around the development of products. Obviously, that is kind of the core of our industry. And coming up with new ways to continue to find more and more challenging targets for development, and whether that's through things like high-throughput screening or adaptive clinical trials to try to get at the information that can help us determine what patient population these things can address and help, or to whittle down candidates more quickly. A lot of effort has gone into that space. In my area, in global regulatory affairs and clinical safety, our main focus is to get these products, once they get through the development phase, on the products and keep them on the market. So there's really a whole supply chain around the information required to do that. So how we get everything together for a filing and make sure we're managing all the filings that need to go in anywhere around the world appropriately timed and holistically pulling all the information together. So that's not really any different than any of the other companies on the line. But I think where we've done a really good job on innovation around developing the product itself we haven't had as much focus around this aspect of how we deliver this information pipeline and manage this really effectively. And so there's a lot of opportunities that we're seeing around innovation now where the technology is really maturing that gives us some real potential to have some significant change, some transformative change around how we do our day-to-day work. So innovation really is the future of where we're going. We really need to challenge the status quo and look at how we're doing things and think about how we could do them in the future more effectively, more easily. And also, for a long time, a lot of us have talked about global decision-making, thinking globally, and we've tried to do it, but in a lot of cases it still ends up being largely based on how headquarters works or in specific key markets. And we're really trying to change that and have a better approach to making decisions at not just the global level, but also the regional and affiliate levels, and trying to place those decisions at the places that make most sense for what that decision is, while continuing to enhance our ability to operate globally. And we think that we can do that through holistic process and technological improvements. And it's really an exciting time right now with all the new technology that's coming to play. And I specifically in the clinical safety area. So our responsibility is really focused on taking adverse event information data that comes in around what people have experienced with our products, whether that's in the clinical trial settings, post-marketing settings, through literature, really any kind of avenue that information comes in, and analyzing that and reporting it out, running signaling on it, and a lot of the investment over the last 15 to 20 years has really been just focused on keeping up with regulations, and a lot of that has focused on how you manage the dissemination of that information to different regulatory authorities. So we've spent a lot of time on systems to manage transferring that data from us to business partners or to the health authorities. And now we're finally getting to a point where the technology is at a place where there's really a lot of new exciting opportunities that are starting to present themselves. And it's also very exciting that it's bringing a lot of new vendors that haven't been maybe as interested in the space into play and looking at some of the opportunities that are available. So I mentioned my group is in the patient safety area, but at Merck and many of your other companies, patient safety is really the primary job. Everyone's focused. Everyone has to take the training on it and make sure they know how to report adverse events. And we're also looking at how we can really leverage a cloud-based infrastructure to help support these capabilities and make us quicker to adapt and not spend as much time on technology upgrades that just kind of maintain the status quo and allow us to focus more of our attention on innovative opportunities that can bring more value to how we do our day-to-day work. So one of the things we started with as we started to look at this shift was really around our clinical development area and moving some of that to the cloud and seeing where we could share some of the learnings that some of our peers have had. So we are a member of the Essential Life Sciences Coalition, where there's a number of pharmaceutical companies that have invested in the clinical development capabilities of the tool and have been able to share some of the learnings, share the platform. So our data is completely separate, of course, but as far as the capabilities, rather than everyone building out the same set of technical components, we can all kind of share that and learn from each other. And as a new member joins in, their investment is then eventually, from a technical standpoint, made available to the broader coalition. And so that's really been helpful on that side as we look to manage our investment. Okay, so we moved development to the cloud and are starting to explore the feasibility of moving some of the regulatory components into the cloud. So we've looked at a lot of the stuff we've been doing the same way for a number of years and realized that there's a lot of the same capabilities and opportunities out there for that, from our full life cycle of development of processing that information chain of submissions and filings, but also around analytics and how we can look at that data. One of the advantages we were seeing with the move of our development environment is being able to pull some of that data together, and that has resulted in moving some of our safety data capabilities as far as reporting and analytics into the same cloud environment. So we now have not only our clinical development data there, but also our safety reporting and analytics capabilities there, with the idea that we can standardize the platform there and then eventually be able to add additional data sources in so that we can use some of the same tools that our resources are becoming more and more familiar with to look at the data in a familiar and interesting way. And the other real exciting thing that I want to talk about a little bit more in PV specifically is really around the ability to use some of this cutting-edge technology to look at automating the case processing activities themselves. So today, a lot of pharmaceutical companies have ever-growing volume of cases coming in. Some are seeing 20% growth year over year. Some are seeing more. And it's really kind of an unsustainable model that keeps throwing people at it. A lot of companies have looked at outsourcing and have used that to kind of help with managing costs and quality and trying to address it that way. But that can only take you so far, because at some point they continue to scale up their resources in a never-ending battle to manage the volume. And we're also seeing the volume shift as its allocation moves to more and more reports coming in through PSPs and things like that, where you have to look at kind of the volume of data and how much quality is it bringing in for the amount of resource that you're allocating to it. And really the exciting thing now is we're looking at a number of companies that are looking at different technologies to help with automating or using cognitive computing to process this data and get it into the case where then a human can look at it and analyze it and think about what does it really mean. So we're spending more of our time on those type of value-added activities rather than just the brute force reading the source documents as they come in and entering it into the case processing system. And so we see, as we're starting to look at these types of technologies, that there's some real synergies across the different areas as you look at the ability to process one type of information coming in, specifically in our area around patient safety data. A lot of the technologies also have applicability to other spaces in regulatory and the broader enterprise. In safety specifically, we see that as these technologies mature and we become more familiar with them, our workload on those transactional types of activities could drop between 50 and 70%. And our IT costs, from a combination of leveraging the automation technologies and moving to more cloud-sourced vendor opportunities, that the IT costs will also drop dramatically, and also give us some more flexibility and redundancy. We're seeing ever-present attacks on the IT infrastructure, just like a lot of your companies. I'm sure you have many attacks hitting your firewall every day. And so, as you look to diversify your cloud strategy and see kind of where you can put different components of your enterprise, it does give you a little more redundancy and support that you might not have if you're still relying on a enterprise data center. But in global regulatory affairs and clinical safety, we're really looking across the spectrum of what we're doing and trying to see how can we use the new capabilities that are becoming available and developing. Some are still very much in their infancy, and really use it to innovate and disrupt how we've been doing things for 15, 20 years or more. And the first thing that we're kind of looking at is really looking at how can we mine some of this data to get an even better understanding of the safety profile of some of our products earlier on than we do today, potentially. And so there's a lot of new data sources available. There's things like social media out there, which, at face value, it's challenging to see, exactly where the value is when you could have anybody posting anything about anything. If you have kind of the four required elements for a case safety report in adverse event reporting, of course, being the product, the event, the reporter, and a patient, then you can process it like a normal adverse event report. But there's also a lot of information out there that maybe doesn't have all four elements, and what kind of information can you tease out of that? Are there some early signals you could start to pick up to help steer your direction, and maybe you can focus with some of your more traditional tools on looking at AE points of interest possibly. And we've all been using kind of the same tools. People use Empirica and some of these different statistical analysis tools. But as artificial intelligence and cognitive computing capabilities start to develop, is there a possibility that some of those technologies could look at the data a little quicker in a different way and start to tease out patterns that might not be readily available with or apparent with our current capabilities? We're looking at using technology to better connect our organization together, and this is one place where we are looking at tools like Appian to help us kind of connect the dots across the organization. One of the challenges with a lot of the tools we have, whether it's in the product safety area or in the product registration management area, is there's a lot of complexity in that data, and that's needed for the folks who are really in the weeds and entering the data or doing some of the really complex analysis. But there's also a lot of value in that data that if it's exposed to the right resources at the right time and in the right way, it can really provide a lot of value that today is a lot harder to pull out of those systems. And so I think as we look at using tools like this to kind of expose the important key attributes to the folks who need them when they need them, and kind of take the complexity out of the underlying systems, it really has a lot of potential. And the interesting thing is, as you become aware of some of these capabilities, you start looking at everything in your day-to-day adventures and realize that, really the places you could apply some of these machine learning technologies or workflow management capabilities really could really help tremendously transform things. Artificial intelligence is a really big bucket. There's simple things such as robots and robotic process automation, where you kind of know exactly where something is and how you want to move it into a certain field or section of a case, for example. And those are kind of easy. We've done some piloting with that already. How it's kind of move things along and speed things up. But where it really gets interesting is when you start looking at some of the natural language processing, cognitive computing things, where you can get to the point where the software can learn more and more of how case data comes in and even process the textual portion of information coming in to help tease out things. And as I mentioned, some of it's in its infancy in our specific area, but it's really exciting to think about how you can potentially start to put some of this stuff in place right now to help kind of direct you and help with quality checks and identify things where maybe a case was assessed as non-serious incorrectly, and possibly the computer could help tease out some of those gaps to the point where as it develops more and more, you can use it to do more and more of the case processing activities potentially to pull out those key attributes, put them into structured fields in your system for whatever type of information you're processing, and really help kind of then get the people involved focus on reviewing and analyzing that information rather than just getting at it and typing it in manually through brute force. And also looking at the patient safety processing user experience of the future. So I think the tools we have today work really well at the area where you've got folks sitting internally processing the data and trying to manage it. But where we find more and more challenges is as the sources of information and the recipients of the information expand, that we're finding that that's where some of the weaker points are. So we have some of our information still coming in through the cutting-edge technology of fax, and that has been a challenge for some resources who are now so used to using their iPhone or their iPad to do everything on their daily basis, whether it's reading the news, paying their bills, or ordering things on Amazon, and then to have to go and do work type activities and helping manage and inform things like patient safety, having to drop back to filling out a paper form basically and faxing it in, and it can be extremely frustrating. So we're looking at trying to develop how can we broaden the technology that we use to really meet the end-to-end needs of the organization and not be focused on just the kind of core activities itself. So some of the implications of this new technology really are around improving the efficiency and effectiveness of case processing. Really kind of, one of the advantages of the machine is as it learns some of these things, you can get much better consistency. And one of the things as we started to look at it and think about it is, the computer may not be perfect at processing this data, particularly initially, but when you start looking at people and comparing how 2 or 3 different people would take this data and code a case and write a narrative, they're not necessarily going to agree. So as you start to tune and train the computer at looking at these types of things, you can get more consistent approaches to managing the data, which could still have mistakes or errors in them, but as you identify those, then it's a little easier to address them and course correct so that going forward you don't have those same issues, and really gives you the opportunity to continuously address that and improve. And it's not like you have to then kind of face the same challenges that you might face with new employees as they're trained and go through their learning curve and development. And so we're really kind of looking to see what is possible out there. A lot of exciting new technologies, a lot of things happening that create so many opportunities. It's really an exciting time to be in this space and think about really where we could help drive things in the next 3 to 5 years and really have some significant change that we haven't seen for a very long time. And then looking to see what opportunities that creates by having those resources that were previously focused on a lot of those lesser value-added tasks, and being able to look at real-world evidence and things like that, and kind of bring that into the flow. So I appreciate your time, and for now I'll turn it back to the moderator, and we'll take questions at the end.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And that was a great first half of the webinar. Now we're going to move into the polling question, the second interactive polling question that we'll be running today. So audience members, exactly the same as earlier on, please go ahead and select the answer most relevant to you and hit that submit button. This question is, I see an opportunity for adoption of a digital business process automation platform for the following. So it's clinical trial supply and execution, regulatory submission and approval tracking, contract manufacturing collaboration and management, testing, batch record review and release of products, or all of the above. So please go ahead and select whichever answer you want and then hit that submit button to submit your vote. The question again, I see an opportunity for adoption of a digital business process automation platform for the following: clinical trial supply and execution, regulatory submission and approval tracking, contract manufacturing collaboration and management, testing, batch record review and release of products, or all of the above. So please go ahead and select whichever answer you like, hit submit, and we're going to see those results in just a moment. I'd also like to remind you that we'll be having a live Q&A session at the conclusion of this webinar. If you have any questions for our speakers, please submit them by typing them into the box there at the top left-hand corner of your screen and hit submit. Spend some time at the end answering your questions. I'll just give you a few more moments now to finish voting in this interactive poll. Thank you very much to everybody who took part. And let's go ahead and have a look at those results. Thank you very much. Here they are. So, okay, so all of the above, again, winning this second poll as well. Thank you, everybody who took part there. And now I'm going to hand you over to our second speaker, Evi. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Rob. On my computer, I didn't actually see the poll results. I'm not sure if that slide may have not been pushed to the audience. Tariq, do you need to do that, or is that something that we skip over?
You see
All right, there you go. Yes, thank you. So indeed, all of the above. Wonderful. Thank you very much. So we're going to move over to, and I want to thank Rob again, very much, very interesting, what is going on, at Merck, and obviously we, are hearing similar moves and similar directions with multiple different companies. I'm going to talk a little bit about the product lifecycle transformation and how that's actually connected to digital transformation and to the best practices in our space. And with that, let me actually just pose a quick thought to you guys. We all are familiar with Moore's Law, the doubling of the number of transistors you can actually fit on a chip every 2 years, which has increased the computing power exponentially over the years. But the one thing that is probably a little bit hidden was a paper in 2012 in Nature that actually discussed Eroom's law, which is simply Moore's spelled backwards. And that was the application of the same type of analysis, but on the cost of developing a drug. And the finding was that the cost of developing a new drug doubles every 9 years. So if we now look at this chart and we look at the 1950s all the way to present time, and on the left we can see the y-axis with almost what looks like a logarithmic scale, number of drugs you can actually develop for $1 billion. And then on the bottom, the x-axis is the years. We can actually see that the trend continues to go down, with a couple of exceptions. We also see, like in the 90s, some push to deal with backlogs on the FDA side, which created a little bit of a different hump in a different direction. But we're still seeing that the cost of developing a drug up to today, where you can actually develop half a molecule for $1 billion today, meaning the cost is about $2 to $2.5 billion today. And that trend does not seem to be changing. And obviously that will be tremendously a problem and challenge for us, because that means that in the next 4 years, it's going to double again. In the next 9 years, it's going to double further. I mean, so we're really going to look at development costing 8, upwards of some 20, etc. $1 billion. Not something we can sustain. There has to be some sort of a change. The time to develop a drug also is important. Of course, time to market, time to get treatments in front of patients that need them. And then the other trend that is actually happening in parallel is disruption. In New Jersey, small company actually developed a pill. It's a drug product that can actually, and a dosage form that actually includes a chip that can communicate to other pills. And of course, the application there is, preventing one pill from releasing its drug based on the fact that it actually senses that there's other pills in the area. And you can imagine there's a lot more happening there. Now, that patent, interestingly, was, of course, sought out by companies like GSK, Purdue, Endo. But here is the real key. Google, Facebook, Qualcomm, Walgreens, Samsung, all are vying to get the rights and license to the patent. What are they doing in our space? These companies, and you can also add Apple on this list, are now entering the healthcare and the pharma space. And the reason is because they're very good at leveraging software, leveraging digital technology to run their business. And in today's world, any company that is not able to transform itself, to leverage technology, to leverage software, to actually differentiate, is going to find itself behind. Little tiny tidbit at the bottom of the slide. I'm not sure if you guys ever heard of the password vitamin, but this is a patent by Motorola to actually allow us to have a little capsule that we can take in the morning or maybe even twice a day, and it has a little chip in it that's going to authenticate us to all the devices that we use. And imagine that, right? You take a pill and now you're actually authenticated on every password you need to use, and when that wears off, you get a warning and you take another pill and you're authenticated again. Wow. A little bit of a tidbit there. Most of us spend 80% of our IT resources on maintaining and keeping the lights on, and only 20% on innovation. And that has to change. We have to move to a different world. We have to move to a world where we're actually able to leverage cloud capabilities, leverage companies who have economies of scale to deal with the IT maintenance piece, and where we can leverage the IT capabilities to really drive change for our patients and for our companies. And digital transformation, obviously, we've been working in software for 20 plus years. I mean, this is not something new, but what does it mean to now look and suddenly see, end of 2017, 2018, people talking about digital transformation? And that is where the software is now becoming a differentiator for our companies. It's no longer, just how we work and how we can go about doing our job. It's actually how we compete. It's about, if implemented optimally, we can actually allow companies to adapt faster. And the adaptation and the speed of adaptation is what's going to drive our ability to move ahead and compete. It's about being able to do what I call BTL, or build, test, learn, quickly, rapidly. You build, you test something, so you build a solution, you build some sort of a process, you test it, you learn from it. If it needs to be changed, you modify it, move ahead, and always continue improving it to the point that it becomes optimal. And it is also about leveraging digital technology to create more engaging experiences for patients, for healthcare providers, and also for ourselves within our companies, where we can become more efficient and more appropriately speedy at what we need to do. So what does it really mean? At the end of the day, it is about erasing geographical boundaries. That's going to be some of the value we're going to get from digital transformation. It's about identifying and creating real-time interaction and activities, 24/7, 365 days a year, every year. It's about creating access to the data when you need it, where you need it. It's enabling fast and quick reaction to the data with agility. And as Rob mentioned, leveraging some artificial intelligence or machine learning or even robotic process automation capabilities to drive that. But it's never going to be to the point that it replaces the human. The human is going to have to be there. Kasparov actually said that very nicely in a TED Talk, where obviously Kasparov was one of the folks that was beat by a computer in the 80s, and he is talking about the fact that digital transformation and the leveraging of AI and artificial intelligence and machine learning is really going to happen only through the collaboration between humans and the machine. It's not going to be where humans are going to be replaced by the machine. It's going to be the collaborative value and the ability to collaborate with each other much more appropriately. And then getting true clarity from the data and from all the processes we run. It is about optimizing and automating. It's about connecting people, processes, and data, getting the data to drive decisions and to allow us to perform tasks faster, and in the process avoiding what we always see, which is analysis paralysis, where the amount of data is simply creating a point where we just cannot move because we just don't know where to move because there's too much information. And the other piece to that is also where we need to be careful to not allow this whole drive to leveraging real-world evidence, real-world data, to arrive at wrong decisions, right? We need to be cognitive about how we move forward into this new area. And it's about getting systems in place that allow us to get to the right decisions and testing those decisions and validating them as we go. And that's not something that the machine itself will be able to always do, right? So that we always need that interaction and that validation in parallel with humans. And it's about getting to accelerate how we work, getting operational agility, leveraging existing systems you have, legacy systems that are in place, being able to overlay with orchestration capabilities that drive value for our customers. Whether the customers are internal or external, we need to be able to get better at leveraging and creating experiences for ourselves and for our customers that are going to allow us to go ahead and advance. And it's really about, closing this big gap between the multiple databases and stores of data that we have. Next, we're going to have this advent of Internet of Things and a lot more data coming in. There's going to be some capabilities that come with AI and machine learning and NLP, natural language processing, and how do you connect all those together but not break the processes we already have in place. And that's where you need some form of orchestration, business orchestration that helps you drive that. It's about bridging some of the gaps between the people and the data and the processes, and it's about getting this layer of applications that are built to leverage information that we already have and make it easy for us to actually work in this ecosystem together. If you look at digital transformation and where it has actually occurred, we can actually see that most of the digital transformation has been taking place in the financial services area. Interesting, right? So with banks and with financial advisor firms, and they have actually moved quite nicely into the digital space. If you look at the other colors on this slide, the healthcare, insurance, and others, which include also pharma, sporadically. There's some laggards, some leaders, and with that, I think it's important to also recognize for yourself as a company, even for yourself as part of a group or department, et cetera, where are you at? Are you part of the laggards or the leaders? Accepting the fact that, leveraging cloud is going to be the requirement to move ahead. There's no longer the ability to actually leverage internal capabilities to drive this. On-premise systems still play a good and important role, but we need to be able to connect that to the computing power that is existing and available in the cloud and the cost savings that comes from leveraging companies whose job it is to maintain and keep data and move it and transfer it. And it will quickly become the point where digital transformation will leverage computing in the cloud, where computing in the cloud is going to be like a utility. You just plug in, like you need electricity. You don't think how it's generated anymore. You just plug something in and you have power. And it's going to be the same here. Computing power is just simply going to be a plug-in function for us. The leaders have actually seen some true significant benefits with time to market reduction, cost reduction, and we in pharma need to move beyond that challenge where data collocation or data localization. Yes, we need to solve those problems. We need to understand, it is important not just because the regulators ask for it, but because we do need to know, and there's some regulations that are in place to require that for a reason. Let's get beyond that and move to the real discussion of how do we leverage this new technology. And the digital transformation in pharma is going to include leveraging mobile communications, the cloud, advanced analytics, RPA, NLP, ML, and AI, and then the Internet of Things. And all of that is going to quickly come together, in my opinion, in the next 5 to 10 years. And you need to deal with how are you going to approach that challenge internally for yourself, for your company, and move ahead and not be left behind. And all along, we need to work hand in hand with the regulators so we don't get tied up in red tape and in more and more regulations, but actually work with them to adopt and adapt these new technologies. How do we get beyond that? There's 4 areas where digital transformation would really drive appropriately for any pharma company, any company in general, but any pharma company. It's delivering more personalized patient care. It's engaging more fully with physicians and patients. It's using data to drive superior insights and decisions, and then transforming the business process, getting to real-time responsiveness. And any company might not immediately be able to deal with each one of these 4 areas, but you need to get good at one of them and then deal with the others as time goes on. I captured this type of diagram on LinkedIn, on one of the LinkedIn spaces that I read, and it was amazing to see, as an example here, a depiction of the various different solutions and solution providers and an attempt at categorization of where various different solutions fall in the clinical space. And this is just mind-boggling to look at how many various different solutions are there. And of course, not every company implements all of these, but you pick and choose from different. But we still find ourselves in a situation where it's overwhelming. And how do we move to a picture that's a little bit more like this, where you really are able to identify the specific solutions for different areas that you need to leverage and then connect them together with a platform that allows you to provide communication and collaboration among the different functions within the company. Get a holistic end-to-end view of where things are at, what is moving forward appropriately, what is not, what is stopping, and what is holding things back. I will take a couple of predictions for 2018, and I will say that we will definitely see more end-to-end product lifecycle management. As companies, we will now look at not just what each silo needs to do, but cut across the silos. We're going to try to look at, an overall product variation scenario. What does it take to actually include in my portfolio new dosage forms, new strength, etc. Robotic process automation will infiltrate much of our discussions. Pharma will move to the cloud with GXP compliant understanding and solutions that permit you to leverage capabilities in the cloud while staying compliant. CROs will play a much more important role, of course, in clinical operations, but also they will take on some additional pharma IT capabilities, including regulatory and other areas. Patient centricity will, of course, drive digital transformation with the advent of IoT, and we have some companies already running some clinical trials, or at least some pilots, and we'll see more of that. And we will eventually end up, in my opinion, in about 5 years with the first virtual clinical trial where the patient doesn't even have to go and see anybody. Maybe they have to see the physician in the beginning, maybe at the end, but in the middle you don't need to go to a clinic. It's all captured, via the fact that you have some sensors and a connection to a mobile device that then can, transfer the information appropriately to the cloud and then to the company that is sponsoring the trial. And patient engagement is going to be king. How we deal with patients, how we interact with them. Patients are going to come much earlier into our processes, into decisions about the medicine and the treatments that they wish to have us proceed with. Outcomes-based and satisfaction guaranteed medicine is going to be the key. We will see payments done to our industry, but with the requirement to rebate if we were not able to meet certain outcome requirements, and the requirement to actually put a satisfaction guaranteed on a medicine in the future. And then, of course, pharma will certainly leverage AI and machine learning as we move into this future. It's all driving towards working to simplify the drug life cycle and commercialization process and getting this benefit from faster time to market, leveraging digital transformation and platforms that allow you to actually connect things better so that you can actually pass information more smoothly to the right people at the right time, get decisions, and drive to shrink the timeline overall, reduce cost, basically leverage software that fits the process, that is highly configurable, that can be done with low-code capabilities that really drive the ability to build solutions like you were building with Lego blocks, rather than having to go back and code and go back to a big shop in India to fix things, which can take a half year or a year, and then what you have is not exactly what you need, but rather be able to, on the ground, make the changes, do this, what I call BTL, the building, testing, and learning, and move ahead, and get to the point where, as a colleague of mine, Jessica Federer, has indicated in one of the DIA talks, if we do digital right, we should stop talking about digital. It's no longer going to be a keyword or this, thing we think about. We just live that way. We just work that way. Digital transformation will become part of how we simply do work. And with that, I will turn it back to the moderator, and let's see if we have some questions, please.
Thank you very much. And that's right. So just a reminder for the audience, in order to submit questions, you can send them in via the questions widget. So just type them into the box at the top left-hand corner of your screen and then click that submit button. So we're going to get started with this Q&A session now with one that we've received already. Thank you very much for this question. So this person says, what are the considerations and initial steps you recommend when starting the first project?
So let me take a stab at that. This is Evi. First, some basic good project management criteria, which is make sure you have a definable goal, make sure that there is a clear understanding of the scope and the parameters around this project, make sure that you understand the key stakeholders that need to be involved. So the project needs to be one where you can identify and define that well, so that you drive and move ahead towards success. Don't look at a very hairy, problematic problem. So as an example, if you look at artificial intelligence or machine learning, and find something where you can actually, you know that the data is not going to require a lot of cleanup. Find a space where you can actually leverage data that you don't have to start looking and searching for, but you know where it's at, and drive to get that implemented, get people to start exercising through that process. That in itself will then drive further success afterwards and allow that team that went through this digital transformation initiative to then sink their teeth into something much more bigger, hairier, more difficult, more complex. I think some basic, best practices and common sense. Rob, I don't know if you want to add anything about, from your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, I think you summed it up. I think that really those are some of the key steps. Yep.
Excellent.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you to the person who submitted that question. We're going to move on to another one, so please keep those great questions coming in, guys. This next question is, can you describe a typical engagement cycle time from identification to deployment of a prototype in Appian? Is this weeks or months, and what is involved? Who wants to take that?
So obviously, I think, I should probably take that, but, I'll allow Rob as well to kind of jump in. So first off, using a platform that leverages low-code capabilities shrinks the timelines to a matter of weeks, a few months, but never years. I mean, some of the longest and really biggest, hairiest projects we've had are about 8 or 9 months, but mostly we find ourselves being able to deliver very powerful, sophisticated capabilities in a matter of 3 to 4 months. Just as an example, the implementation of a safety information tracking system validated in the cloud in 16 weeks. And this is not leaving aside, some functionality over here, over there. It's like this is being able to leverage and put the platform to work towards the adjudication process end to end with reporting and creating PSURs on the fly right there in 16 weeks. Rob, I think you guys also have some experiences with, some implementation in projects. Is it, what are the timelines that you guys were looking at and the complexity of those projects?
Yeah, thanks, Evi. Yeah, we've seen kind of the same thing where it's definitely much faster than the implementation of even some of the so-called COTS products we've tried to use. And we have a fairly onerous SDLC life cycle that we go through to implement our stuff, but we've seen things move much faster, in alignment with the timelines you mentioned. And I think part of it might be related to how you really are kind of focusing on what that business process is and figuring out what it is you need to do, and then going and kind of mapping those steps to where you need the data from, or what you need to store, capture, and who you expose it to. Whereas I feel like in some of our other system implementations, you spend a lot of time first just trying to understand how the tool works, and you sometimes also spend time figuring out how you want your process to work, and then you spend additional time remapping it just to work within the constructs of the tool, and then you get into the full validation cycle. But I think with the Appian platform, so much it is configurable, really, more than any custom code development that we've gotten into so far, at least, and that's really helped speed things up on our end.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing there also, and it's important. So the platform indeed is important. I mean, so the right platform that can afford you to actually work in an agile methodology, but it's actually the agile methodology that really drives some of this value creation in a rapid way, and the discipline to be able to identify what's important, what needs to be delivered, getting to the point that you can actually start delivering functionality, in the first 2 weeks, first 4 weeks, as you go through the sprints, every 2 weeks, to be able to actually put forward some capability, not wait for a whole half year until you actually get the users to be able to do some testing. You need to look at bringing everybody together, including the validation and, QA and compliance folks, to the table early, identify what needs to be done, what are the pieces that we need to put in place so we don't end up at, and what I also see many times is we go through an agile methodology and development, which shrunk the timelines, and then we step into a half-year validation project, which completely erased all the value and time you created, and we're able to kind of benefit with the agile methodology. So we need to arrive at a hybrid situation where we leverage the solid methodologies of what we used to have as our waterfall validation methodology. So they were good, they generated quality. How do we bring that into a agile methodology in a hybrid way that allows us to actually still move fast but not jump over quality hurdles along the way? And I think that's key.
Lovely. Thank you very much for the answer there. We're going to move on to the next question now. This person says, can you specify a bit more which type of challenges or barriers to become a connected organization can be resolved by which type of technologies?
Rob, I'll let you take a stab at that.
Yeah, thanks, Evi. So I mean, I think one of the challenges we've had with trying to become more of a connected organization in the past is we do rely a lot on integration layers and trying to manage mapping the information from one existing system to another. So we use things like TIBCO and other tools to move data from one place to another. But then you start running into challenges with multiple copies of the information. You have to start managing synchronization and ensure you're not getting out of date. You can run into timing issues. And, it's been an ongoing challenge for us to try to figure out what works best. So we are, looking at what technologies we can use where you're not doing that copy of the data and really trying to find other ways to have views into the data from the source system natively rather than doing that copy and transfer. And that's kind of what our approach has been lately, is to try to see how can we leverage those types of things. So that's one of the things where a tool like Appian can be interesting. One of the things we're actually kind of realizing we need a greater need for right now is better integration between our safety application and our product quality complaint application, because right now they're separate, and we have some of those types of integrations in place that I mentioned before, where they're kind of that one-way push, and as data gets updated, you move it over. But we're realizing it's not really robust enough, so we're looking at it from a couple angles. One would possibly be, some kind of overlaying layer that could kind of let people view the data they need, but also looking at different reporting capabilities. We deployed a different reporting technology last year for our safety space that has the ability to bring in hooks from other data sources, and so we're also looking at that type of technology to help bring those data points together and make the organization better connected. Evi, would you have anything to add?
No, I agree. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move into another question now. Thanks everybody for submitting these. Please do keep them coming in. We're going to try to get to as many as we have time for today. This one says, what are some of the pharma and biotech industry dynamics that are driving manufacturers to consider cloud-based platforms?
So first, just the volume of information we need to deal with. So if you look, for example, at the safety space, and the fact that it's no longer just adverse events flowing in from known databases. You can go and pull those on a while, every quarter, every month, whatever, however you need, and bring that in and adjudicate it, deal with it. It's really the requirement now to actually start monitoring information that flows on social media. Wow. I mean, okay, so now do you have the internal computing power to actually deal with that volume of information? The other piece is the fact that I think we've recognized that internally the cost and the utilization of our internal IT folks to do and repeat work that our neighbors are doing as well, and the neighbors are doing as well. There's no economies of scale there, and many of the folks move from one company to the other and jump into similar situations. If there are companies today that have made it their business to make computing power available as a utility, why not go there? Now, of course, we need to check to make sure that information is secure, information is available, information is going to be available when we need it 25 years from now, because we need to keep the information for 25 years in pharma to support the drug that's going to last for 25 years. Okay, all of that is true. We can do it. So can those big companies. And when you say cloud, it's not that ephemeral. These are companies who have server farms very much on Earth.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer there, and thank you to everybody who submitted a question today. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so that just leaves me to thank Rob and Evi for what was a great presentation. I'm sure you'll all agree there, and to thank Appian for sponsoring this session.